At 0412 hours, far out in the western Pacific, the enormous U.S. aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan carved a steady path through calm waters. Around her, the carrier strike group moved like a floating fortress. Ticonderoga-class cruisers, Arleigh Burke destroyers, supply ships, and an unseen screen of submarines. It was a normal patrol, routine, predictable, but deep beneath the ocean, where sunlight could never reach, something was waiting. A Chinese Type 093A Shang-class nuclear attack submarine, stealthy, upgraded, and operating far beyond its officially declared patrol zones. Its mission, according to several OSINT fragments, still unverified, was simple: test how close it could get to an American carrier before being detected. But the submarine's captain had other ideas. He didn't just want to shadow the carrier, he wanted to ambush it. The carrier doesn't know it's being hunted. 0417 hours. On the USS Ronald Reagan, the day shift crew moved through pre-dawn routines. FA-18Cs were prepped on deck. Pilots stretched before training flights. Radar operators performed routine sweeps. Nothing on their screens suggested danger. Nothing hinted that beneath the waves, a Chinese submarine was closing in, slowly, methodically, like a predator stalking prey. Inside the Reagan's Combat Information Center, a junior radar tech yawned. "No contacts underwater within threat range," he said. The watch supervisor nodded. "Quiet morning. Let's keep it that way." But the ocean was lying. The submarines move. On board the Chinese submarine, tension was rising. The sonar chief whispered, "Enemy carrier group detected. Bearing 114. Range. Closing." The captain studied the digital map. U.S. formation ahead. Destroyers fanned out. Carrier in the center. He smirked. "They do not know we're here." The exec officer shifted uneasily. "Sir, orders only instruct us to track, not to provoke." But the captain's mind was made up. Perhaps driven by ambition, or pressure from Beijing, or personal ego. No one knows. Some Chinese social media leaks later claimed he was acting under special political instructions, but these remain unverified. He pointed at the carrier. "Bring us to attack depth. Prepare torpedo tubes, but hold fire." A silent ambush was about to begin. The first red flag, 0426 hours. Aboard the USS John Finn, one of the carrier's escorting destroyers, a sonar operator frowned. He tapped his headphones. "Sir, I'm getting a faint anomaly. Low frequency, irregular." The sonar supervisor leaned over. "Whale? Too rhythmic. Merchant ship? Not at this depth." A pause. A long one. The supervisor swallowed. "Keep listening. Mark the contact as possible subnoise." This possible subnoise flag would later become a critical clue, one that analysts would use to reconstruct the ambush attempt. At the time, though, the contact was too weak to classify. The Reagan strike group kept sailing forward, straight toward the threat. The submarine climbs into strike position. 0431 hours. The Chinese submarine rose to 160 feet, the ideal depth for launching torpedoes or anti-ship missiles. The torpedo officer whispered, "Tubes 1 and 2 loaded." The captain nodded. "Good." The exec whispered, "Sir, we should not be doing this." The captain's eyes gleamed. "They will never know we were here. We will withdraw after demonstrating dominance." But he was wrong, very wrong, because at that exact moment, U.S. intelligence picked up something unusual. The U.S. Ghost Net detects a shadow. Thousands of miles away, in a secure room at the Office of Naval Intelligence, a screen flickered. A low-resolution acoustic pattern appeared, barely readable. A technician called out, "Possible Chinese 093A signature, heading straight for the Reagan." Her supervisor rushed over. "Timestamp, just seconds ago." He dialed Pacific Command. "We may have a problem. Recommend alerting the carrier group." But before that call fully transmitted, something else happened. Something no one expected. The ambush begins. 0434 hours. The Chinese submarine closed to lethal range. Inside the attack center, the captain whispered, "Prepare passive tracking solution. Confirm target lock on the carrier." The sonar chief nodded. "Solution confirmed. Carrier within engagement parameters." The captain exhaled. History was moments away from being rewritten. Then, without warning, ping, a single unmistakable active sonar blast tore through the ocean. The Chinese officers flinched. The captain snarled, "Who pinged us?" The sonar chief's face drained of color. "Sir, it came from above us." The predator becomes the prey. The Type 093. A submarine froze in shock, because a submarine doesn't ping unless it wants to send a message. And this message was crystal clear. "We found you." A U.S. Los Angeles-class attack submarine, silent, unseen, waiting, had positioned itself directly above the Chinese sub. The Chinese captain stared at the ceiling as if looking through steel and water. How? When? The sonar chief whispered, "They ambushed us." While we were ambushing them, the Chinese captain's panic. Shock turned into fear. The torpedo officer stammered, "Sir, the American submarine is locking a solution on US." The exec shouted, "We have to dive. We have to break contact." The captain's voice shook. "Flood ballast. Take us deep. Now." But as the submarine began to descend, ping, 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 multiple sonar blasts echoed around them. Not one submarine, more. The US had a submarine Wolfpack waiting, a trap, and the Shang class was in the middle of it. The final message, then silence. Shortly after the sonar pings began, the Reagan strike group received a chilling transmission from one of the American subs. "We have the Chinese boat boxed in. Recommend escalation protocol." The US was preparing its next move. The Chinese submarine was surrounded, and the Reagan, once the hunted, was now completely protected. But before the US could decide the next step, the Chinese submarine made a sudden, shocking move, something that changed everything, something no one expected, something that nearly triggered war. 0437 hours, Western Pacific. The Chinese Shang-class submarine tried to break away from the American trap. "Dive! Dive! Dive!" the captain shouted. Ballast tanks roared. The hull groaned under pressure. The submarine plunged toward 1,000 feet, but the American Wolfpack wasn't letting it go. A Los Angeles-class submarine above it followed the descent. Another US sub to the east shadowed its path. A third vessel, believed to be a Virginia-class submarine, though this remains unverified, pivoted into blocking position. Inside the Shang class, alarms blared. The exec officer yelled, "Sir, we cannot outdive them. Our crush depth." "I know," the captain snapped. "Take us to 1,200 feet. Hold there." The crew exchanged terrified glances. 1,200 feet was far below the submarine's recommended limit, but the captain was desperate. The US gives its final warning. Aboard the Los Angeles-class submarine, the American commander issued one calm, chilling transmission on an encrypted frequency. "Chinese vessel, you attempted an ambush on a US carrier. Surface now, or we will force you." Inside the Shang-class sub, the captain slammed his fist into the console. "They will not fire." Americans hesitate, but the sonar officer trembled. "Sir, they're locking torpedo tubes on us." 2 subs, maybe 3. A quiet terror filled the compartment. The US Navy's most feared weapon primes, 0440 hours. In the torpedo room of the US submarine, sailors armed Mk-48 ADCAP torpedoes, weapons infamous for their ruthlessness. An American technician whispered, "If we launch, that Chinese boat is gone." The captain nodded grimly. "Stand by. We don't fire unless command authorizes, but keep tubes hot." The American submarine's fire control solution reached 98% accuracy, a perfect kill shot. The Chinese sub makes a risky move, 0442 hours. The Shang-class sub stopped diving and suddenly turned north, directly toward deeper waters. The Chinese captain pointed at the map. "If we can reach the trench, we disappear." The exec shouted, "That trench is unstable. We'll risk implosion." The captain didn't care. "We go now. Ahead flank. Silent running." Engines hummed. The submarine surged forward, but in doing so, it made a catastrophic mistake. It passed directly in front of the Virginia-class submarine, and the Americans seized the opportunity. The US fires back, 0444 hours. For the first time in the entire operation, the United States took offensive action, not with a torpedo, but with something designed specifically for a moment like this, a Seashock tactical disruptor. This device, whose existence is often debated and remains partially unverified, is believed to be a non-lethal underwater shock pulse weapon that can stun enemy submarines without sinking them. The Virginia-class sub launched the device. It detonated 500 yards ahead of the Shang-class. BOOM! A thunderous underwater shockwave blasted through the depths. Inside the Chinese submarine, lights flickered. Crew were thrown against bulkheads. Electrical panels sparked. Systems went offline. The sub shuddered violently, rolling sideways. The torpedo officer screamed, "We've lost buoyancy control. Ballast systems malfunctioning." The captain realized what had happened. That was not an explosion. That was a pulse weapon. The Chinese submarine is disabled, 0446 hours. The Shang-class submarine spiraled downward uncontrollably, the ocean pulling it toward crushing depths. The sonar chief shouted, "We're descending too fast. 750 feet, 900 feet, 1,050 feet. Hull beams groaned. Metal bent. crew members prayed. Finally, the emergency ballast tanks activated automatically, slamming the submarine upward. It stabilized at 920 feet, barely avoiding collapse. But the sub was now crippled, half blind, half deaf, and surrounded by 3 American attack submarines. The Predator had become helpless prey. The Reagan Strike Group reacts. Aboard the USS Ronald Reagan, alarms sounded across the deck. The carrier captain received the encrypted update: Chinese sub disabled, awaiting your directive. Flight deck crews froze. One officer whispered, Did we really just neutralize a Chinese submarine? Another replied, we may have saved the entire strike group, but the admiral in charge frowned. Disable? Yes. Destroy? No. We're not starting a war today. He transmitted orders back to the American Wolfpack. Hold position. Monitor the sub. Do not fire unless fired upon. The US made its stance clear. Contain, not kill. The Chinese submarine's desperate choice. 0449 hours. Inside the Shang-class submarine, the political officer shouted, You must order retaliation. We cannot return home defeated. The captain glared at him. We have no working weapons. We cannot maneuver. We cannot hide. The political officer yelled, Then die with honor. But the crew was done listening to him. The exec officer grabbed him and forced him into a seat. Shut up. You almost got us killed. The Chinese captain, breathing heavily, finally made the hardest decision of his career. Signal the Americans. He paused. We are surfacing. The sub rises into the light. 0453 hours. The Shang-class submarine, battered and barely functional, began to rise, slowly, reluctantly. Defeated, it broke the surface like a wounded animal. Hatches remained sealed. Crew stayed inside. No flags were raised. Within minutes, the USS Ronald Reagan, the guided missile destroyers, and even a USP-8 Poseidon aircraft surrounded the sub. The Americans had complete control of the situation. A message echoed across the radio. Chinese vessel, stand by. We are dispatching boarding teams to assess your condition. The Chinese captain answered with only 3 words. We surrender inspection. A shocking phrase. A phrase unheard of in modern US-China naval history. The final shock. But before US teams could reach the submarine, new radar signatures appeared. Multiple, fast, aggressive. A Chinese carrier group had just left port, and it was coming straight toward the disabled submarine and the US Navy. The crisis wasn't over. It was about to explode.